Howdy, it's your favorite below average content creator here, Drowsy. And in the time between my previous video and right now, I might have gotten a little addicted to Warhammer 40k. It's one of the many reasons why I haven't really been uploading, at all. Now, you might be asking yourself, Drowsy, why are you making a video entirely about Warhammer 40k? Well, to answer your question, my dear viewer, not only do I have a crippling addiction, I also have a much larger video currently being worked on right now, and I just wanted to make a video so my upload schedule doesn't have another 6-month gap between uploads. This video will just serve as my view of 40k as a new fan of the series, so if I get any information wrong, please do inform me in the comments. I will be more than happy to listen to any corrections you guys have. This video will also be a little less structured than my other videos and will probably just be me aimlessly yapping, so you can consider this my filler episode after 2 months of almost radio silence. Now, I guess it's time I tell you how I got into 40k in the first place. You see, I've always been a little interested in 40k, but I never really decided to get into it until I picked up Darktide, which, if my memory serves me right, my friend Templar, who is probably the biggest reason I got into 40k, and I know is going to watch this video at some point, found out that I was interested in learning more about the franchise, and then after that, I found out I apparently know quite a few people who are also into 40k. Not too long after, I started to learn more about the lore, which spiraled into me getting Space Marine 2, and now I'm here. I've painted miniatures, own 2 Horus Heresy books, and fun fact, I actually just picked up some Cadian shock troops today. They aren't painted yet, but don't worry, I'll do it at some point. My friend Templar, who you'll probably hear the name of quite a few times, is really into 40k, and is basically a walking 40k lexicon. He ended up linking me 2 videos explaining every Warhammer 40k faction, and then another video explaining every Space Marine Legion. After I finished these videos, I was entirely hooked on the series, especially after finishing Space Marine 2's campaign, which I had absolutely no clue what was going on during a lot of it, so I had to have it explained to me because I didn't know a lot about the universe at the time. Fret not though, dear viewer, my knowledge is somewhat better now. Not too long after I finished the videos, I was sent a podcast by the name Adeptus Ridiculous, which I began listening to, and that inspired me to do a little bit more reading about the lore on my own. And the next thing I know, all I've been doing is listening to a podcast talking about 40k lore, reading 40k books, browsing wiki pages, and painting miniatures, although I don't really paint miniatures too often. They're extremely expensive. I was in my local game store the other day looking at 40k miniatures. I grabbed a box off the shelf that I thought looked really cool, and then I looked at the price tag, felt poor, and then proceeded to do a long walk of shame out of the front door. Let this be a lesson of financial responsibility for all the kids in the audience. I know that a lot of people just opt into 3D printing their miniatures to save money and build large armies, but I don't really have anyone to use them with, so I more or less just kind of collect them because I am a responsible adult that definitely doesn't still spend all their money on toys. Price aside, for some reason all of this stuff was like crack to my tiny little brain. I just couldn't stop myself, and I still can't stop myself from learning more, honestly. There's a lot of fantastic things that come from the series, and there's so much to go over, even with my current limited knowledge of 40k. I guess a good place to start would be to talk about not only the most iconic, but also a lot of people's favorite part of the series, Space Marines. Also known as Adeptus Astartes, or Beakies if you're an orc, are usually what everyone thinks of when they think of 40k. Or I guess just Ultramarines and occasionally Black Templars. At least that's what I assume, because those were the only 2 I actually ever saw before getting into 40k. Now, before I talk about different factions, I need to say that I won't be going over every Space Marine chapter in this video, because as I mentioned earlier, this video mainly serves as just one person's experience with the franchise, and because this is my channel's equivalent of a beach episode, I don't really want it to be that long. I'll start with my favorite Space Marine chapter, the White Scars, which I honestly thought would have been far more popular than they actually are. They're just really cool, especially their Primarch, Jagatai Khan. Anytime I see this guy, I get a goofy grin on my face. He's just so entertaining and so cool to me. Maybe it's just because I enjoy their obsession with speed and the whole Mongolian aesthetic they have going on, but I swear anytime I hear about them doing absolutely anything, it's just the coolest thing ever. If my memory serves me right, a lot of the other chapters genuinely believe they're savages, despite the fact there are a lot of other factors pointing to them being anything but savages. I could talk about the White Scars all day, genuinely for the entire video, but I need to force myself to stop right here so the title doesn't change to Why I Love the White Scars So Much. Moving on to everybody's favorite boys in blue, the Ultramarines, who are also the most represented faction in all of 40k, and it's clear they're Games Workshop's favorites too. Ultramarines are the poster boys, meaning a lot of knowledge on what a Space Marine can be viewed through what an Ultramarine is, at least from personal experience. The Ultramarines' Primarch is Guilliman. Or Gilliman? I don't really know. He's actually really cool, and the Lord Commander of the Imperium, which he helped reshape after the Horus Heresy, which I entirely forgot to mention before. Now, how did I forget to mention the Horus Heresy? The Horus Heresy is a defining moment in 40k, and without divulging too much information, the Emperor of Mankind had 20 genetically engineered sons, his favorite being Horus, who decided to give his dad the biggest fuck you ever, so the Emperor went from looking like this to this. Looking good there, Big E. As mentioned before, this event is called the Horus Heresy, and to say that the sons of the Emperor had daddy issues is the biggest understatement ever. Let's just say that. Yeah. I might be wrong, but according to this chart, the most straightforward way to the climax of the whole Horus Heresy books is to read 22 books. You're never gonna guess what I plan on doing. Moving back to Space Marine chapters though, there are so many of them that I can't even count how many there are, and clearly neither can the Imperium, so I'm not gonna do it either. Speaking of the uncountable amount of Space Marine chapters there are though, I want to talk about the Chaos Space Marines because they are so awesome, and fuck, I gotta talk about the Black Templars, don't I? Okay, look, I don't actually hate the Black Templars. I actually think they're pretty cool and find a lot of their ideas extremely entertaining to watch. The only way I can describe the average Black Templar Marine is that of a classic COD lobby if you made everybody in the lobby a crazed religious zealot with 500-pound power armor. Unfortunately, anytime I see these guys on the internet at all, in any context, throughout my entire life, they're always used in the same humor context. The only thing similar to the kind of humor I'm talking about is that one channel no one has really thought about in forever called Bread Boys. Nothing against the people who run that channel, by the way. I don't know anything about them, really, other than that they posted a few cringy videos a long time ago. Moving on from that, my first exposure to the Black Templars, or just 40k in general, was the one Flash Gets video titled Furry Apocalypse. I'm honestly so disappointed that this was my first experience with not just 40k in general, but the Black Templars as well, because 40k is so much more entertaining than that video made me believe it was. I do personally enjoy the Black Templars, if you couldn't tell. I'm not their biggest fan or anything, and they're not even really top 5 for me, but I do enjoy them. Okay, now I can talk about the Chaos Space Marines. To keep it a bit brief, Chaos Space Marines are essentially just what if Space Marines had even more daddy issues than they already do. And before you get angry, yes, I do understand it's a little bit more complex and varied than that. Loyalist Space Marines are only barely cooler than these guys to me. Like, I ranked all of my favorite Space Marine chapters once, and surprisingly, I thought most Chaos Space Marines were just cooler than a lot of Loyalist Space Marines. However, only one Chaos Space Marine chapter is in my top 3, and those are the World Eaters. I don't know why, but they are just so cool to me. Their Primarch also plays a huge part into why I love 40k so much, and it's not just his character, it's also his name. His name is Angron, and he's angry all of the time, for a very good reason that I don't have enough time to talk about here. But he definitely probably has some of the most daddy issues in all of 40k. Going back to the lack of subtlety in 40k's naming, I adore the lack of subtlety in some of the names in 40k. It's a little dumb, but it is so enjoyable, and oh my god, Chaos Space Marines have some of the best designs in the whole franchise to me. The Thousand Suns are a great example of this. Their whole Egyptian aesthetic is just amazing looking, quite frankly. It's also extremely cool that all of the Thousand Suns Space Marines are basically just walking urns. Now, I don't entirely remember why, I just know it's some sort of curse or something, I believe, but I could be wrong, so take that with a grain of salt. There's not really much else I can think of to talk about with Chaos Space Marines in this video, and I am really sorry I didn't talk about them all that much, but I don't want this video to be super long, and it is currently 3:50 in the morning right now, so I'm gonna go get some sleep. Oh, fuck off! Now, you might be asking why I ended up getting into Warhammer 40k in the first place, because for those who don't know me, I'm not really known to be a sci-fi fanatic or anything. Sure, there's pieces of media I like that are sci-fi. I mean, my favorite piece of media ever is Cowboy Bebop. In fact, I love Cowboy Bebop so much, even my channel icon here in YouTube is a reference to my favorite episode of the series.
See you, Space Cowboy.
But outside of Cowboy Bebop, I'm not really the biggest Star Wars fan, and I don't really enjoy Dune or anything really like that, but for some reason, 40k has a chokehold on me so tight, I can almost relate to Bart Simpson. Maybe it's because I really enjoy fantasy games, movies, books, etc. It's really strange that I'm not really all that interested in Warhammer Fantasy, because that should be even more up my alley than 40k, but I guess the child in my brain found Space Marines just too cool. Now, don't get me wrong, 40k has more than enough fantasy elements to it, but for the most part, it leans very heavily into the sci-fi genre, even more than it leans into fantasy. It really shouldn't have clicked with me quite like it did. The most I've enjoyed a more classic take on sci-fi, somewhat akin to this, is when I used to watch old Star Trek episodes with my mom when I was like 7 years old, and Star Trek isn't really anything like 40k if you haven't noticed. Maybe I got into 40k because I think the idea of a space crusade is extremely entertaining, but it feels like it's a whole lot more than that. The lore is so vast and entertaining to me, I can't help but love researching it, and researching happens to be one of my favorite things to do in general. My enjoyment of the lore is so great because I just love discussing it so much. Everyone I have personally talked to that enjoys 40k was really nice and willing to be patient with me when I didn't understand a concept immediately. Again, Templar, thank you. Maybe I'm just lucky, and I know I joked a little bit about the Black Templars earlier, but other than seeing stupid memes on the internet, actually interacting and consuming content from the 40k community is a whole lot more relaxed and enjoyable than I initially thought it would be. I also learned that I do actually quite enjoy painting miniatures because of 40k, which I'm not very good at, but it is still very fun to do. The only thing that really keeps me away from buying more to paint is that it is so damn expensive. I mean, every time I have bought miniatures, I have to remortgage my house just to buy 2 Space Marines smaller than a lighter. I can say that the games were a major influence on me getting into 40k. The first 40k game I ever played was Bolt Gun around a year ago now, and at the time I didn't really know anything about 40k, I just played Bolt Gun and that was that. Darktide was also very fun, although I have played Darktide very minimally as of writing this. Space Marine 2 is the one I have personally sunk the most hours into due to the gameplay clicking the most with me. I just adore its gameplay. It's just so fluid, so satisfying, and it really scratches an itch for hack and slash gameplay that I have had for a very good while. I actually have a funny story involving Space Marine 2 that also explains why I've been making such slow progress on making my next video. So gather around the campfire, kids, it's time for a spooky ghost story. You see, one night I was playing Space Marine 2, just listening to music, when a Five Nights at Freddy's power outage happened to my room. So, since only the power went out to my room, I went and reset the breaker, and when I went back up the stairs and turned my computer on, it wouldn't boot at all. So after freaking out for a little bit, I decided I would drive it to Best Buy the following morning and give it to Geek Squad. When my computer got repaired, I was told my secondary drive was entirely corrupted, and they ended up entirely replacing it. Luckily, there were only games on the drive, so I didn't really lose too much. However, I was given the option to keep my corrupted drive for whatever reason, so obviously I said yes, because what's cooler than keeping your old broken hard drive in your room? The only reason I could find that my secondary drive in my computer failed was because I was playing Space Marine 2 on the highest graphics settings, and a sudden power outage corrupted the drive because the processing power the game was taking was so high. I genuinely can't find a better explanation for it happening, although I'm not really the best with computers, admittedly. Although my computer is all fine now, and that's really the most I can ask for. Getting back on topic, I really love all of the different factions there are. There really is a faction for everybody here, and one of my favorites is the Astra Militarum. Now, I'm running out of time here, so I'll keep why I like them as brief as I can. The Astra Militarum is classified as a horde army, meaning they are more about strength in numbers than individual strength. This idea comes through beautifully in artwork of them, where you can't even see the ground beneath their feet, it's just hordes and hordes of humans. This aspect of the Astra Militarum, or Imperial Guard, illuminates one of my favorite parts of the 40k universe. And that's just how goddamn bleak everything is. You see, the Astra Militarum are just all regular people, just like you and me, and them being classified as a horde army is so terrifying when you think of how little one life matters to a horde. Now, your average guardsman isn't actually ill-equipped or had poor training. They're actually better equipped than, say, your average US military soldier. I will use a direct quote here from my friend to put into perspective how much better their gear is, but before I do, I would like to apologize for stealing your homework. Sorry, Templar. Quote, standard issue guardsman armor can actually stop rounds of 7.62mm, modern rounds used in AKs, consistently and at close range. End quote. So when these guys get popped into a red mist like it's nothing by a bolter, you can tell they're really fighting above their pay grade. Sometimes your commissar will just shoot you in the head for even having the mere thought of fleeing cross your mind. It really makes you realize just how disposable a human life is in the 40k universe. Yeah, sure, I like 40k because it's badass, but it's also just really interesting to see how the characters in the universe deal with all of the brutality that's thrown at them. So when there's even a moment that is slightly peaceful, or dare I say, normal, it feels really special, or out of place, and it really comes together to make a wonderful experience. I haven't even mentioned most factions because I don't nearly have enough time in this video to be able to go over all of them, although I do also really like the Tau. I haven't really had this much genuine wonder for a series in quite a good while. Don't get me wrong, I still have other interests that I love and have a lot of wonder for, but none of them quite have the amount of amazing lore or have really captured me in a specific way in a while, except for Sonic. I love Sonic. Don't even get me started on the amount of books there are. I don't really know how many there are, but from everything I can find, there's just about over 600 of them, maybe more. I don't know. There's quite literally an impossible amount of content to consume from 40k. I can't even wrap my head around it. To tell you how much content there is, quite literally a few minutes ago, I accidentally found out there's an official bolt gun typing game entirely by accident. I guess the Emperor just really values that all of his loyalists know how to type and use proper finger positioning. As I was just stating, there's a lot of content and it can be very overwhelming at first. I'm not used to being into things with this large amount of content, so I guess I was a little taken aback by this. But from the looks of it, this massive catalog of content is going to grow, and I'm excited to see what new stuff comes out of it. Now, dear viewer, if anything I talked about even mildly interested you, you probably thought to yourself that you might want to get into Warhammer possibly, and if that's the case, I heavily recommend you at least give Warhammer the good old college try. And if you made it to this part of the video and you weren't interested in Warhammer, you either left me on in the background while you were playing games, yes you, I see you, I do the same exact thing. Or you genuinely enjoy listening to me yap, which I greatly appreciate that. But if 40k does actually seem up your alley, there are a ton of resources out there for getting into it. I will try to link the ones I use in the description for all who are curious, or you can just be like me and know people who are already into it, which is definitely the best way to go about it, by the way, because most of the fun I have had with 40k is talking about my favorite factions and the lore with other people. I would also like to say I'm sorry that I wasn't able to mention every faction or chapter in this video. If I missed something, please feel free to tell me about it in the comments. I would love to hear it. And one last thing before this video ends, I would love to give a shout out to my friend Templar, who is letting me use his name in this video, and also for getting me more into Warhammer 40k in the first place. Anyways, this has been your favorite undertrained and underprepared Cadian shock troop, and remember, if the glorious Emperor of Mankind hates AI, then you should too.